You're on the air with Florenza, your podcast destination for authentic conversations with a twist. So, grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and join me on this unique literary journey. Cheers! During this episode of On the Air with Florenza, we welcome author and storytelling advocate Penelope Starr to discuss her captivating book, Desert Haven. Set against the sweeping backdrop of the Arizona desert, Desert Haven is a powerful tale of resilience, transformation, and the community search. With heartfelt prose and unforgettable characters, Penelope explores the beauty of starting over and the healing power of connection. Please put your hands together and welcome Penelope to the show. Thank you so much, Penelope, for joining me on this episode of On the Air with Florenza. And I just love your name. I don't know if that's your given name or not, but it's such a sweet name. Penelope Starr. That's sweet.
Thank you. Penelope was the name I was born with, and Starr was the name that I assumed.
Very nice. Well, good choice. Good choice indeed. And in honor of your book, I am drinking from my woman can coffee mug. And so I actually did a whole French press and did frothing of my coffee creamer just for you. So you are drinking.
I am drinking sparkling tangerine water.
Oh, that sounds refreshing. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
It's been a long time since I've toasted with coffee. But for our regular listeners, just in case you're wondering, yes, Mama has the wine close by. We don't want to disappoint. You look so worried. You're like, oh my God, what is she going to ask me? Is there some vodka for this water? You might not need it yet. Okay. Let's see. We're going to, here they are, here they are, here they are. Today, we are diving in to your newest book, Desert Haven. So I have so many great questions for you. So Desert Haven is such a powerful tapestry of interconnected lives. What inspired you to structure this as a novel and connected stories rather than just the traditional linear narrative that most novels have?
Well, I think it was because I fell in love with each of my characters and I wanted them each to have a showcase. So there are 15 different stories about 15 different women in the book. So, but their lives are intertwined, as you said. So I think it made more sense for me to give them each a place where their voices could shine.
Tell us about the women and what is it that you hope that we walk away with having been introduced to their stories?
Well, I think in addition to the women, there's another character, which is the land.
Yes.
And it's a women's land in Arizona. It's fiction. This is inspired by real women's land, but the stories all came from my imagination. So I think this women's land movement that started in the late 60s, early 70s is still viable. It's still happening. And a big question is what's going to happen in the future to the land? Because a lot of the women have died off or are old and they can't sustain their lives in country settings. So they're looking for the next generation. And that was kind of the question that I had in the back of my mind while I was writing the book. Like, okay, this was the heyday and we could see it start to deteriorate, and what's going to happen next?
And that's so important, especially in our country, and not just in our country, but all over the world, where for women to own property, like we had to go through so much just to get to that ability to own land, right? And then to have then owned it. And now with the question of what's going to happen to it next, what is it that young women, or what is it that you would want younger women to know about that movement of women's land, that they can walk away with moving forward in their own lives?
Well, the whole thing's very idealistic, and the women really went there with the idea that they were going to change the world.
Mhm.
And I'd love to have young women still believe that they can change the world, especially now in this political climate.
Yeah. What would young Penelope say about the world that you and I are living in today?
Not again.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
to do this all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you like to say to your younger self were she present, to hear some words of encouragement or advice that you would want to give to her?
Keep fighting,
Yeah.
keep the faith.
Yeah. Yeah. Your nonfiction book and your work founding, with Odyssey Storytelling, and we talked a little bit about that. You were sharing with me that you now volunteer with the organization. Tell us a little bit about the organization and what was the passion behind, bringing it together?
Well, Odyssey Storytelling, which I started in 2004, so it's 21 years old, um, was inspired by my daughter-in-law, who started a community storytelling event in San Francisco called Porchlight. And I came back to Tucson with that idea. And within 6 weeks, I put on the first show, which was pretty phenomenal that in that I didn't know what I was doing. But of course, it didn't stop me because I was so inspired. I just think it's such a great idea to give everybody in the community a voice, to
Mhm.
give everybody their 10 minutes on the stage to tell their story. And it's all based on true stories. So the book, I wrote the book as kind of a how to, because I wanted other communities to be able to, have this kind of event. And so I talked about how I did it and all the mistakes I made. And maybe you don't have to make those particular mistakes, you can make your own mistakes.
How important is storytelling to, I mean, I don't want to put the weight of humanity on your answer, but really truthfully, how important is storytelling to us as for humanity?
Well, I think it's the basis of connection.
Yeah.
This is how we connect to each other. When you hear somebody's story, you can connect to their humanity and they're no longer the other. And there are
Mm,
things in everybody's story that you can relate to, even if it sounds like, oh, that person's a different gender than me. I wouldn't have anything in common with them. Of course we do. We have so much in common with each other. And I've over the years with Odyssey storytelling, I've seen that happen in terms of prejudices being dispelled and people connecting with other people that they would never meet in their everyday life.
mhm.
Is very powerful. It's powerful for the storyteller to be able to be heard, but it's also powerful for the audience.
Of your characters that are in Desert Haven, if you were to have them all over for an event, which of the characters would cause the most drama, one or two, and which would pack up and say, I'm out of here. Y'all deal with all of this?
Well, there's a character that kind of reappears in the stories that's kind of grumpy and has been through a couple of girlfriends. And I would say I would I wouldn't mind if she sent me a, gee, I'm sorry, I can't make it. There would be drama because of all the extra girlfriends that
Uh-huh.
have, you know.
And who would pack up and just say, forget it, I'm out of here?
I'd say Marga would probably leave, but I don't think it's because she'd be pissed off. I think it's just she'd be done.
Yeah.
Enough talking about this. I just need to be by myself. So, yeah.
How much of Penelope is interwoven into the characters' lives and stories?
Oh, I'm in every single one of them, but none of them are me.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you're writing, you have to be in that person's space in order to know how they would be feeling.
mhm.
And so I pull a lot from things that have happened in my life or things that I've heard, and I use those for everything. Anybody around me knows I'm a writer, so be careful what you do. It might end up in a book, right?
Might end up in a book. Have you had any family or friends read your stories and go, "Okay, seriously, Penelope, did you have to tell everyone?" Or is it interwoven in such a way that they don't catch it?
Well, I don't know if I should say this, but I did have my son say, Mom, there's a lot of sex in this book.
Honey, yes. How do you think you got here?
Exactly.
You talked about the land itself being such an important character in the story. How differently would the story have been told had it been set somewhere else?
Oh, good question. I do have a very little a reference to some women who moved into town and sort of created a communal home in a building, and so I was trying to refer there to the fact that you can have communal living anywhere. It's just different. But these women on the women's land were specifically trying to be more self-sufficient and grow their own food. And it kind of relates back to the land movement in the 60s. And so I think the needs are the same. The needs for connection and community are the same, but
Mhm.
how it's expressed would be different.
Have you ever just unplugged and gone and spent time on the land for an extended period of time? And if so, what was that experience like?
I haven't been on women's land for a long period of time, but my partner and I have a trailer, and once or twice a year, we take it down to a lake, and she leaves me there, and I have a writing retreat for a week by myself, and it's glorious. It's absolutely glorious. I don't know anybody. I don't have to talk to anybody, and I just am in a creative space. So yeah, I think I would do well on the women's lane, but I don't
Uh-huh.
know. But all the personalities come together, and that's a whole nother thing.
Uh-huh. Now, when you said she takes you there and leaves you, in my brain, I'm thinking, oh, that's the beginning of a horror movie right there. I was already like, oh, hey.
No, it's actually an act of love because she has to hook up the trailer to her truck, haul it down to the lake, disconnect it, leave, set it all up. It's the biggest gift anyone could give me.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
solitude.
Yeah.
Now, is she your biggest supporter, or does she serve in that role of being that voice of criticism so that when you address that voice, everything else is smooth sailing?
Oh, no, she's my supporter.
Uh-huh.
But, it's interesting because she reads what I write, and she's German. And so English is her second language, and she knows English grammar better than I do because they had to learn it.
Yeah.
So she is definitely an excellent reader. And she also knows a lot of the references that I'm talking about. So she can tell me when I'm being true to them or not.
Very good. Oh, that's so sweet. Have you had any of your characters that after you finished and you've written a book that they just linger on like either like a delicate perfume or like a big poop and you just want to disconnect from them?
Well, I can address that from two sides. One was I had the opening story in this book was this woman named Helen, and I loved that story. And I loved her because it was about somebody who was very boring. And I was trying to write an interesting story about somebody very boring. Well, I couldn't do it.
Uh-huh.
So I had to break up with Helen. And it was really hard. And it happened at the lake on one of my
Uh-huh.
retreats. And I remember walking around the lake saying, you know, Helen, we're really good together, but you're just not going to be in my book. I'm sorry. I have to get rid of you. And she said, that's okay. You'll find somebody just as good.
Oh,
So, which I did. So it was very traumatic for me,
uh-huh.
actually. And on the other end of that, at the end of the book, Sunshine is young woman with a lot of potential and going off on a quest. And I feel like she's kind of the future. And I'm
Mhm.
excited about following what she's going to do next. So that will be another book.
Nice. Oh, I love that. And isn't it strange when you're talking to someone who's not a creator, not a writer, and you try to explain that to them and they kind of look at you with the side eye versus when you're talking to a creative and they're like, I know my characters stick, you know?
Right, right, right.
Were there other characters that had come to mind for Desert Haven that either just didn't make it other than Helen, and that you find that you've created other stories for them that just didn't fit within Desert Haven?
Yeah, there were a couple. There were a couple. I have a file on my computer that says, use these someday.
Oh,
Nothing's wasted,
yeah, they don't have a rest in peace. They just have a comeback later.
Right, exactly. I have a hard time killing off people in my writing.
Isn't it hard? Well, unless I'm doing like an actual like murder mystery, I find it hard to kill people too.
Yeah.
Although I'm fascinated about it often, but different story, Penelope. This is not about me. This is about you.
Uh-huh.
You've lived a vibrant, creative life, and you've also been a long time desert dweller, which sounds kind of interesting in and of itself. What has been the most unusual experience that you've had that even you were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened?
Well, do you know what a javelina is?
No.
Okay. A javelina is a very, very large rodent looking thing that people say looks like a pig, but it isn't a pig. But they're big and they're fierce. And they roam. I live out in the desert and they roam everywhere around here. And when they are in a pack, sometimes, 20 javelina together with adults and babies, they're said to be somewhat scary and could possibly be dangerous. So one time I left the garage door open and there was a big box of dog food in the garage. Well, they were kind of strolling by and I guess they smelled it and they decided they were going to go in the garage and have a feast. So I heard this noise and I opened the door from the house and I saw them nibbling away at a very expensive bag of dog food.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, no way, no way. And I went and I got one of those big dust mops,
Uh-huh.
that's hairy.
Uh-huh.
And I went out and I was shoving at him, screaming, go, get out of here, get out of here. And the moms looked at me and the baby scurried and the dad said, what? And I just kept at it. And all the time I'm thinking, where's my escape route?
Yeah.
Is this the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life? And I finally got them all out of the garage and shut the door. And I thought, boy, that was really stupid.
But how much food did you save?
Well, Okay, probably about $50 worth of food versus being gored by a javelina.
Do you see Desert Haven as a snapshot of a specific time in feminist history, queer feminist history, or as a living, ongoing call to build community um, and challenge the status quo everywhere?
Yes, both of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think that it's important for us to remember our history and to let young people know that they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's a living group and growing movement, and it has to change
Mm-hmm.
and evolve. And the times have changed. And you can't go out in the desert and buy 10 acres for $2,000 an acre anymore. It just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's new challenges for young people. And but I do think it's a viable option for people who really want to live their lives as an example of what is possible.
Yeah.
There's that age-old thing of, do you change the system by joining it and making change, or do you drop out, which was a big thing in the 60s, which
Yeah.
is where I'm from. And I think they're both viable choices. I think both are needed. We need to have models and role models of people who are saying, I'm going to live my life sustainably. I'm going to live my life with integrity, and I'm going to live my life on my own terms.
So powerfully said. If you could give a message to your future self, what would that message be?
Well, I'm going to be 80 years old in 2 months. So my future,
Congratulations.
so my future
You look
self
so
doesn't,
good.
thank you. My future self doesn't extend as far as your future self, but like I said, I'm working on another book. Actually, I'm working on two. And I think creativity doesn't stop. And that's what keeps you alive and vital. And so I would say to my future self, do the best you can, keep working, keep trying new things.
Tell us about one of the projects that's coming up and what we have to look forward to in your next book.
Well, it's changed as I've written it, as you know, that seems to happen. So my characters had a different idea than I did, but
Uh-huh.
I started out writing a cozy mystery set in northern Arizona in the 80s with two lesbian sleuths, and one of them is psychic.
Ooh.
And it's going along, but I don't think I'm really a mystery writer. I think that's a whole nother thing. But I do have some mysterious uh, aspects to the book, but I don't think I can call it a mystery anymore. We'll see what happens by the time I get to the end of it.
Nice. Now, when you get a new um, challenge like that, how do you take on new challenges? Do you just dive in and say, I'm going for broke? Or do you kind of dip your toe into the challenge and see how it feels before you decide if you're going to waddle on into the challenge?
No, I'm completely submerged. I just jumped in. So I'm doing a lot of research and about not only the time and the music that was playing at the time and stuff like that, but also there's a element that features very strong in the book, which is the maze or a labyrinth. So I've been lost in the maze, as it were,
Yeah.
of research and having a lot of fun with that. So no, and it's, I'm not one of those people who gets up in the morning and writes for 4 hours and then has breakfast and goes for a run. That's not me. I write when I feel like writing.
Yeah. Where are listeners able to engage with you and follow you?
Oh, I have a website, penelopestarr.com, and I'm on Facebook at Penelope Starr, whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
And You can always just send me an email. I'm always happy to hear from people.
Before we transition into my last call, one of the things that I wanted to share in terms of Desert Haven is that you open the dialogue for the reader to question perhaps some areas that maybe they don't have full knowledge of, or maybe they've taken a position on one way or another in terms of beliefs, and you open a door for dialogue. What is the one area or one of several areas that you hope Desert Haven brings people to a table to have an open conversation about?
Well, to me, it's very important that, like you're saying, that conversation happens. That when there's a conflict, something there's a way to resolve it. So I think there's a scene in the book where people are stealing the vegetables out of somebody else's garden, and it seems like a little thing, but there in that particular case, instead of dealing with the issue and working through it, the two women decided to leave the place. That's an option. So, that's one way to deal with conflict. There's another area where a trans woman is on the land, and it causes a lot of uproar. And I try to, in the book, what I try to do is talk about the fact that just expelling someone or running away from the problem isn't really solving anything.
Right.
And that we need to talk to each other and find ways that we can all live together peacefully. And that's not especially popular opinion right
Yeah.
now, because people are so divided. It's either
Yeah.
yes or no. And I hate to see that happen, because I think we have a lot more things that unify us than there are things that divide us.
Yeah, and as you were speaking, what I heard was the beauty of your storytelling is that it brings us to the table to have open, honest conversations with each other. And that is a powerful um point or mission or ability to have when it comes to being a creator. So thank you so much for that. Now we've come to the part of our show, as I was saying, that is my one for the road, very similar to what we did earlier, but not as thought provoking. So these are fun. Okay. Now, oh, these are true or false. I'm going to read the question and then I will say if I believe it's true or false, and you tell me what the answer is. Okay.
Okay.
All right. You once hosted a storytelling event on a summer solstice. Um, and I'm going to say true.
Yes, true.
That just sounded like something you would do. Was that spectacular or what?
I think they're all spectacular. That's just my opinion.
I agree. I agree. One of the characters in Desert Haven is loosely inspired by your dog, Cosmos. I'm going to say true.
No.
Do you have a dog named Cosmos?
I do, but I think my dog's better behaved than a lot of those other dogs.
Okay. The name Desert Haven was originally going to be the last dry land. Oh, I think that's false.
I think that's false too. Yeah.
Okay. Was there another title for the book?
No, it just came to me as Desert Haven, and it seems so apt because I like to think of it as a haven.
Very nice. You wrote some chapters of the book under a full moon as a creative ritual. I'm going to say true, true.
No. But maybe I should for the next book.
Okay, last one, because I think I'm 50-50. I got to break this. Um, you've lived off grid for part of your life in the Tucson desert, and I'm going to say true.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yes, you've lived off grid for part of
Oh,
your
okay.
life in the Tucson desert. And I'm going to say true.
False. You want me to change it to true?
No, we had fun. I needed to get stumped. These were really good, though. They were like, could have been, could have not been.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Penelope, for joining me. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me, and it's really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.